host, Mr. Sydney Brownwood.
Hello, thank you, good evening, and we're back. And good evening, and welcome to the TooFatLardies Oddcast. And this evening, I'm joined by the Buzz and Woody of Wargaming, Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Chaps, welcome back to the Oddcast.
To oblivion and beyond.
There's a snake in my boots.
Well, on that note, it has been a while since we did our last show. It's good to see you back with us in the studio. So what's been happening in your Wargaming world, chaps?
Well,
It has been a while.
It has been a while, and consequently, what hasn't been happening in our wargaming world might be quicker to tell. But let's start at the very beginning, Nick. It's a very fine place to start. Mike and Henry, I think, probably one of the highlights of the most recent chapter in the world of Lard.
Yep, so we were very lucky to be able to host two giants of the hobby who came to Lard Island and cleared their way through security, and we played a whole day of gaming with them.
Yeah, Henry wrote an article for WSS magazine, Wargame Soldiers and Strategy, about bridges, and he wanted to have a go to play that out on the table, didn't he?
So we played a game of Chain of Command in the morning.
We did.
In the Russian front, and Henry's spoken about this on his Patreon podcast, Chat.
So you had many bridges to cross.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we had to change the table layout to suit the needs of the game, and the whole thing was about space on the tabletop. And how we used woods to create zones, if you like, on the table. But
hence Buzz and Woody, I guess.
Is that what you think? What it was? Yeah, and that was fascinating. Then in the afternoon, we played a game of sharp practice with the chaps, and that was good fun too. Very different game, and nice. Yeah, just nice to bring them together and for them to have a game, and of course. Then in the evening we did other stuff.
Showed them the sights of Verulamium, the Roman walls, and then generally got pissed and went mental, really, wasn't it?
Very nice Italian restaurant.
Very nice, yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Henry was speaking Italian. I mean, that's amore.
I believe it was Italian. Either that or it was complete drunken jibber jabber.
Jibber jabber.
The waitress is very polite about.
Yes, there is that option that they were both speaking drunken jibber jabber, but I do actually think it was Italian. Henry was very demonstrative in the way he spoke it as well. It was almost like being an evening with Mussolini. The amount of arm waving going on, it could have been on a balcony.
Did he have a hat as well?
No, but he had that wonderful bottom lip going out and the big pose with the crossed arms. It was fabulous.
I'm not going that way, so there's too many lampposts down that road.
That sounds splendid. That was a great show, and I missed that, obviously. That would have been a lot of fun.
It was, Sid, actually, and funnily enough, both Mike and Henry said how much better it was without you there.
Most things are. Most things
That's
are.
what your wife's told me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And but that's not been the only thing, because I keep looking online, and every time I go onto Twitter, I just see hordes of barely clothed Germans running around a tabletop. Is that anything to do with your wargaming?
Barely clothed Germans sums up your social life, really, doesn't it? Infamy.
If I'm lucky.
Infamy. They've all got it. Infamy. I was approached by some guys from Harrogate Wargames Club. Who we talked about before, John and the gang, and they said to me, "Here, Rich, we've been working on like sharp practice ancients," because that's the way they talk in Yorkshire.
It's not like from an episode of The Sweeney.
No, and I said, "Well, that's funny actually, because in my mind I have a plan that I'm working on a set of ancients rules based on some of the concepts within sharp practice." So I got really enthusiastic about this and started painting loads and loads of stuff which we can talk about on the workbench. But basically, all of a sudden I thought, actually, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because I'm going up to Harrogate next weekend. I thought, rather than take their game and me hack and chop it, I'm just going to sit down and see what comes out in terms of my ideas, which have been rattling around in my head, but I haven't really put them on paper because I'd been going through the phase of getting figures painted and everything. And all of a sudden, this sort of ideas started gushing out. It was a sort of fire hydrant of productivity, and it's one of those things where you think, blimey, I better try and capture all of this. So I've been sat at my desk typing down all these ideas, scribbling it out in books, and really trying to encapsulate all of those ideas into a set of rules. And I'm really, really pleased with what's been happening. We've always said when it comes to developing a set of rules, it's a creative process, not a mechanical process. And if somebody says to you, right, Richard, here's thousands of pounds, go and write this set of rules, you can't do it if you don't have the inspiration. But having found that inspiration, all of a sudden I've got this situation where all of these ideas have come gushing out. It's been brilliant. I've really, really been enjoying riding that tsunami of creative thought. So that has led to me, of course, doing a lot of painting and stuff like that, which we can talk about in the workshop. But that's kept me busy. And it has meant that, Nick, you and I have been doing some work as well with Arnhem, but all of a sudden I've got a bit diverted, haven't we? What about, tell us about your Arnhem fun, mate.
Well, the Arnhem Fund now is getting everything tied up into a product, into something that we can actually share with other people, and making the document work, really, making the campaign tie together. We've got all the component parts, and we've got a mechanism now that we're happy to use about how we track 30 core progress, etc. So we had a very productive journey down to Exeter, where Rich and I were together, shut in the car for 4 hours.
A bit more than that, mate.
Yeah, probably
near
was.
as 6 hours.
And we bottomed out some really crucial bits of that. So it's it's close, isn't it?
It's funny how these long journeys, sometimes you're enforced to spend time doing nothing other than travelling, and that time can be put to productive use. We've talked about before about the ferry trips we used to have on the way to the continent, where we wrote the original version of Sharp Practice in a 3.5 hour crossing from Dunkirk to wherever the hell it was, Dover, I think. And very much in the same vein, when we 6 hours in that car was just productive, wasn't it?
It was, and it enabled us to lay the campaign end to end, and then see where the gaps were, fill those gaps in, understand how we're going to present something that is so potentially huge in terms of the number of games that are contained within it. Every time you open a new book on Market Garden, there's a different campaign or a different scenario that leaps out the pages at you. So controlling it and containing it to something that we can actually make work for Chain of Command has been quite a challenge, actually. So we're now at the stage where we're saying it can't get any bigger, and it just needs to now be tied up and get all those loose ends together.
So you got it to a good size. You're not going to shrink it down. I mean, sometimes when you sort of put things together, you can't to a maximum size.
I think we said last time when we spoke about this that we'd realised that actually this is not one supplement. It's going to be a number of supplements that cover the Market Garden operation, from the initial breakout from Joe's Bridge to the collapse of the used to beat perimeter, and everything in between. And there's different units on different timelines. So it needs to be presented in a way actually. If you played it from end to end with every scenario from Joe's Bridge to the collapse of Oosterbeek, you're probably looking at about 50 or 60 war games that you're going to have to play to run that through. And who's going to actually run that unless you've got to spare 5 years? We have to be able to break it down into parts that people can get to grips with, and if they want to then run the whole thing end to end, that's great too.
Yeah, I think one of the key things we found with the pint-sized campaigns is, in order to make a campaign successful, it has to be achievable. People have to be able to see that there's an end to it. And what we wanted to do with this was create it, break it down into bite-sized pieces. So maybe you want to say, oh look, now we've got 6 weeks or whatever till Christmas. Let's play the initial campaign of 30 core going all the way to Eindhoven. You can play that and then put it to one side, go and play Sharp Practice, go and play Ducks, go and play Bag the Hun, and then maybe next Easter you'll go, right, we're ready to do the next bit. And it gives you a chance maybe to paint up some US Airborne, if you would then want to do, the bridge at Son up to Nijmegen, or maybe you think, actually, I don't want to do the bit with US Airborne. Maybe if you're British, you're going to say, I want to jump straight over to Arnhem. Well, Arnhem's going to have 3 different pint-sized campaign small campaigns within this series. So you could just jump straight to that, but you still can tie in what's happening with 30 Corps, even though you're not actually playing those bits. So it gives people an opportunity to pick a mix. And again, maybe you just want to play the US Airborne aspect. So there's going to be, it's going to allow people a lot more flexibility. The point was, it was getting to be about 350 pages, which is just non-viable.
Yeah,
it's almost the Bible.
Yeah. But one of the things that I think you can
not as much wiseness.
More jokes, maybe. More
Yeah.
jokes. And you've been also testing, as well as writing, you've been testing Jeeps in Hereford.
We that's right. Well, we've been to. I took the Recce Jeeps, the famous Recce Jeeps.
Boom! There they go.
Yeah. I took them to Hereford, to the show there while you were off on your holidays, and we had a very good day playing with the guys there. We played 2 games, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and in each game, the guys were able to get some Recce Jeeps off the table and to Arnhem Bridge. The idea of the game was that we created a scenario that was, could the Recce Jeeps get through the German stop line before the German stop line sort of closed the road completely. And in the morning, they got, I think, 4 out of 8 Jeeps through to the bridge, and in the afternoon again, they got 4 out of 8 Jeeps through to the bridge. And the difference was in the morning game, the 4 Jeeps that didn't get to the bridge were held up and were, survived. Whereas in the afternoon game, the 4 Jeeps that didn't get to the bridge were probably an insurance write-off. I think would be safe to say. but really good to get it out. Then we had a fun day there with other people, and we've got some audio on that we can share with you.
Yeah, let's listen to that now.
Okay, so I'm at Hereford. I found Andy Miller from Peterborough War Games Club, and you are doing what today, Andy?
A version of What a Tanker.
And you're playing it as a demonstration participation game?
Mainly aimed at participation. What I'm hoping to do is get mostly the young, but anybody to have a go at the game. It's on a 4x4 board. It's supposed to last about 30 minutes thereabouts to make everybody just realise what the game's about.
Yep, so you've got a really simple table layout, some hedges, a couple of buildings, 2 tanks aside.
Can play other ways. We've got 3 Shermans against a Panther if we want. There's a lot of possibilities.
The Bartman Corner Overdrive game
yes.
We brought up to... we brought that up to you,
Posh
didn't we?
Lard, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, and then what have you had then? You've had kids playing it, or have you had old farts playing it? What's
a little
the
bit
mix?
of both. Mostly younger. We've had quite an awful lot of children versus their parent, which was a real grudge match.
Yeah, and who won?
Usually the kids. They play dirty. We
Yeah.
had 2 young ladies manage to divert their father's attention. The younger one went up one side, and then the older one shot Dad in the side armour.
I like the sound of that. And you've made some modifications to make the game even simpler for a brand new audience. Well, that's perfectly all right. It's just you bought them. You do what you want with them after that. But what kind of things have you changed?
What we've changed is I took out the to hit roll. Basically, it's a bit more bloodthirsty. So rather than having to roll 6s or 7s to hit, modified. Yeah. If they've got a shoot, they hit.
Okay.
So again, makes it a little quicker, a little bit more bloodthirsty, and more likely to kill.
Okay, and good fun for participate. So you're going to be playing it all day. You've got a break at the moment. You've had about 6 games already today?
6 games today. Yeah.
Oh, good, lovely. Okay. And what about the show? Have you had a chance to look around?
Believe it or not, no.
No.
I'm too busy.
Well, you're on the best game, so don't worry.
Absolutely.
Just stay where you are. Okay, look, right, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much for taking What a Tanker and sharing it with the masses.
Yep.
And for sharing your enjoyment and enthusiasm for it.
Yep. It's a lovely participation game to get people involved.
Good. Thanks very much, Andy. Okay, here we are, Hereford. The afternoon. We just finished the afternoon game. Mervyn played the British Airborne with Recce Jeeps on the Utrechtse. Did you get shot to shit, or did you get a good outcome?
Despite your assistance, I blew the pants off you, Nick, and I achieved 20 points worth of 20 figures off the table, and it was a fine British victory.
So you got 4 Jeeps off the far end of the table. 20 extra guys got to Arnhem Bridge.
Yes.
With 4 heavily armed reconnaissance jeeps.
Yes.
Would that have been enough to make a difference?
Definitely.
Definitely, I think so. Right. So when Richard Clark says that all that's going to happen in this game is that the recce jeeps are going to get shot to shit, we just prove that the man is a fool and he knows nothing.
He knows bugger all.
Yeah.
I've always said that. No, you've always said that.
Yeah, I've always said that. So, chaps, you were watching. What's your name, sir?
Rob,
Rob, you were watching. How did he do?
he done all right. He done okay. It was a good game. Good game. Passed. Which I
Fast,
liked.
wasn't it? Yeah, and he kept pushing on, didn't
And
he?
he didn't really know what he was doing, let's be honest.
No, he didn't either. But let's be kind to him. What's your name, sir?
Pete.
Peter. So, did you catch any of the game, Pete? You were
Just
sort of doing
the
other
last
things.
10 minutes I was a wee Jacobite in the corner, but it's another set of rules we won't talk about. But yeah, I mean, he did seem to do a very good effort of wrecking the recce unit, I have to say.
It's quite
there are
effective.
4 or 5 floating around on the road.
Yeah,
he's
he's very keen to tell you that 4 jeeps got off the table.
Yeah,
What he didn't
yeah.
tell you is that the other 4 jeeps will never move again. Having been, there's a bit of a traffic jam on the contraflow this morning
I think a
outside
bit
there.
of a pent job. I think they'll be fine.
So look, and Herringwood, you've been at the show. You've been gaming all afternoon. You guys have been doing some shopping
And gaming as well, yeah.
and gaming as well.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's a
Good
great
show?
Yeah, it is a good show. It is a good show.
I think we've been 4 out of the last 5 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years, whatever. But you know, it's a lovely, it's
My
laid
first
back.
time in, I like it.
It's laid back, plenty to do, some good games, good participation, demo games,
Nice.
nice little
Nice
traders,
venue.
a few little
Really
bargains.
nice venue.
And it's only 2 hours from Norwich, given everything else is about 10 hours away. So it's
Right,
nice to
yeah.
actually be able to
So
drive
it's a
here.
crucial. It's a must-do date in your
Yeah.
calendar, is it?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. Good. Well, thank you very much. So, the certificate of the Golden Jeep must go to you for
Marvellous.
succeeding where nobody else
Yeah, yeah.
has managed to do yet. They did get 4 Jeeps off this morning as well. So it's there's a pattern emerging, and the recce Jeeps can do it. They can get off the table.
Can
so,
go off the table. Richard, do you hear that?
Yeah, Richard, the man says you're a bloody fool. And with that, we'll hand you back to the studio and Sydney.
Well, interesting stuff. I'm still not convinced, Nicholas.
You're not convinced, are you?
No, I reckon that if I was on the end of that MG42, your Jeeps would be blazing hulks all the way along the Utrechtsweg. But we will see. But the good thing, actually, about that scenario is they may well have got off that table, but there's still another table behind them where things... They've got to fight their way up the Utrechtsweg. This isn't just one game and you're off. It's part of that Set Craft mini-campaign that we've got up there near Volphaser, haven't we?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. If you get guys to the bridge, they get to the bridge. If they don't get to the bridge, they could end up at Oosterbeek.
That's right. That's the 2 options, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And that will then determine who's with Johnny Frost and who is at the Hartenstein in Oosterbeek holding out there, which, again, they're 2 mini campaigns in their own right. So it's going to be a right bucket of monkey fun.
And you're going to have games which the results influence different parts of the campaign.
Yep.
Well,
So-
each campaign will influence another part of the campaign.
It's
So,
all
for example,
interconnected.
whole
Yeah,
thing's
that's why it's
interconnected.
so tricky, because therefore the sequence potentially is important. We're trying to design it so the sequence can be varied to suit what you want to do as a gamer. So
That's
it's,
nice.
the key thing, really, think about Market Garden, the key thing is where are 30 core? So the overall driver is, where are they on their timeline? Are they on time? Are they ahead of schedule? Or are they held up?
So you need a clock with a big thing saying tick, tick, tick. As the
Well,
sounds
wait and
of-
see, Sydney. Wait and
Yeah.
see.
Who
All
knows?
these things are being tested now as we speak. So don't be so blooming nosy, mate. That's...
Yeah.
As if I am.
Or this industrial espionage game. Trying to find out.
Very good.
But it's nice to know we're actually play testing these things with all the talk in the hobby about things, how important play testing is.
Yeah.
It's
Play
the
testing
fact that
very
we've taken
important.
nearly a year to do this just shows how much play testing we have done.
Oh, the fact that every time I close my eyes, something else comes to the forefront of my mind about this campaign is, I think, testament to the work that we put into it so far. Anyway, but yes, well, so that's where that is.
That sounds absolutely splendid.
But Sid, you've been out and about.
I have been out and about. I went to Colours in early September, which was very good. It's a show I've been to. I think we all went to a few years ago, and I haven't been back
Yeah,
since.
used to
But,
go.
And we're planning to go back next year.
well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good show. It's got some great trade stands. A very busy trading day by the traders, but there's some good games there. I met up with some chums. Mark Backhouse was there. Guy Bowers.
Peaches.
Peaches was there, Guy was there, various other people as well. Fraser was there, one of the other Lard chums. There's quite a lot of people, in fact. So I had a good chat with Mark about mine and his 2mm game of the Siege of Constantinople.
Yeah, I've seen
This
some photos of
sounds
that.
absolutely
Crazy.
bangingly mental.
Yes, it is rather mental, but I mean that should be good fun. So that builds on Mark's game last year, the Siege of Portsmouth. So we've gone Portsmouth to Constantinople. It's a little bit of a change in
Is Hercule
scale.
Poirot involved? Is it on an opulent French train?
I have
Wagon
suggested to Mark we should do some research on the Orient Express. But,
So is there a
see
plan
how
to
it
bring
goes.
this game to the tabletop anytime soon? I've seen some
Next year.
photos of it.
Yeah, next year. Well, I'm meeting Mark tomorrow, in fact, to chat about some of the stuff and to swap around some of the bases. So we're busily making figures at the moment in 2mm.
Getting a big tin of peaches.
A
From
large tin of peaches will be served over lunch, I think. Yeah. So next year,
I
hopefully,
hope you transport the whole
2020.
game in an empty tin of peaches. I suspect.
Probably
A small family car,
Yeah.
possibly.
a star in a small family car.
Well, that's the idea.
So yeah, so
So
colours
portable.
was it's I haven't been for a few years to colours because it doesn't sit very well with family birthdays in my house.
It's tricky. It's a tricky time because it's close to going back to school. So if you've got kids, they're getting ready for school and sporting activities with school and end of the summer. It's an awkward sort of time, but I think it's a show which is well worth going to. Well attended, very busy.
We are putting
Good
it back
football.
I like the venue there. I like the racecourse is a good venue. Sorry.
We're putting it back on our schedule,
Yeah.
our every year annual schedule. We really want to. It's a show we really want to attend. We've identified half a dozen shows. But the issue we've got is, of course, we've got so many Lardy Games days now, so many Lardy Games days, that we try and support as much as we can. I mean, at the moment, I think I'm going to them all this year and hopefully all of them next year. And as a consequence, some of the shows we've had to let go by the by, but Colours is definitely one we want to have on our calendar every year. And I have to say, I'm so pleased it's gone to a one-day event.
Yeah.
I simply cannot be bothered with 2-day shows anymore. So one day makes it absolutely back there in the Lard hemisphere, or whatever the word is.
Although it's interesting going to the shows, because we used to do a lot of that. We used to go
Yeah,
to
we
triples, and we used to do Selwag and obviously Salutes and Colours, and it's nice to do some of the shows again. I mean, the Lard Games Days are fantastic, but doing both, I think it's really good, because then you meet people that you don't always meet at the Lard Games Days.
Yeah.
If you're doing a game at a show, you always have people coming by. Sometimes they're old friends, sometimes people are just interested, and it's a great way of meeting just a different group of people that you don't always sort of get to meet on
I was
the
actually
games days.
thinking recently, I'm quite keen to just go to a war game show as a punter, which is something I just so rarely
I was
do.
going to say exactly the same thing.
Perhaps we should go, Nick.
Well, that sounds like a
good.
plan.
Sounds like a plan just happened.
3 of us.
That would be very good.
Go.
And
In a
take our
kind of
microphone.
in a mystery bus with a dog. If it wasn't those pesky kids, we'd get away with it.
Can we get somebody to be Velma?
Well,
No, I'm not wearing that frock again. See,
Oh, damn.
that nylon fabric's terrible.
Moving on. Other
moving
road
on,
trips.
yeah, well, talking about pesky kids, we've been hanging out with some pesky kids in Exeter.
How did that?
Yeah,
Did you?
well, some
Did
pesky
you
kids who are probably, same age as us.
Same
but
age
still
as us,
pesky
really.
kids.
Yeah. Great time, actually. Really
There were
good
some
time.
pesky kids there, to
Clotted
be
love.
fair. There were some pesky kids.
kids. Yeah. I'm not sure how one defines pesky kids. I mean, they weren't cartoons, and there was no closed down funfair with an odd janitor involved.
Did
Unless
you
you
rip
count
the-
Bob.
Did you rip the mask off them at the end?
That's right. Something like that.
Rip
Yeah.
the mask off the child and reveal Bob Connor underneath.
I thought he
Hello,
was the
Bob.
evil janitor on the roller coaster ride. We had a great time at Clotted Lard in Exeter. It was really good, and in fact, we're going to hear about that shortly. So let's keep stum about that. But suffice to say, we had a really smashing welcome. Loads of people, loads of games flooding out into the second room this year.
The games looked superb. I mean, there was some really good things which I saw on social media. In particular, the one I think set in the Northwest Frontier.
There's Northwest Frontier
really
game there. That was
fantastic.
Colin.
Yeah,
was running
brilliant
that.
game. The problem is, I'm getting to the point really where I'm going to buy a small image of Colin and start sticking pins in it, because last year he had a fabulous game set in the Spanish Netherlands of sharp practice version of sort of Tudor type sharp practice, which was utterly beautiful and brilliant, and I thought I could covet that, and I'm not meant to covet. But this year he had Northwest Frontier with Chain of Command, and I thought, well, I could covet that as well. And
He's a very talented
I'm
man,
getting to the point really where I hope I can actually burgle his house. Because these games are really, really great looking games. They're fantastic.
So you're really the villain.
That's right. I'm the one in the mask.
You're the one in the mask.
It's not Bob Connor. I've got a Bob Connor mask.
Hang on a minute, let me just pull his face off.
and no broken ribs this year.
No broken ribs this year.
She's
No,
splendid.
just a few broken hearts.
But I did hear that Jim had a few episodes.
Well, we're still mourning the loss of Jim. We don't quite know what happened to Jim.
He was off in his extraordinarily expensive sleeping bag.
He was. Poor old Jim Ibbotson. We send him our best wishes.
We do, and we hope he's got
Get
over
well
the hangover.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, we think that he might come out of his
Sleeping bag.
sleeping bag by the time we get to Salute, maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows? Hopefully for Evesham next year. But great games there. You know, some noteworthy ones. I really enjoyed playing. I Ain't Been Shot Mum with Ian in the afternoon. That was really fab. And hello to Bill from Plymouth who was alongside me in that game. Who'd never played IBSM before. So he'd never played before. I hadn't played it for about 5 years, and between us we actually had a really great game there against Welsh Jeff. And Phil and Jenny were there with their fantastic table of St Mary Glees that they've made up, which
brilliant game,
beautiful looking table. Yeah. You know, always the quality of the table displays is just phenomenal.
That's Jenny. In fact, I don't know what Phil does really. I think he just turns up like a parasite, and whereas Jenny's the one who deserves all the credit. But big shout out to them, and congratulations to Phil, who's just retiring.
Retiring from doing nothing to doing nothing.
To doing absolutely nothing. That's clearly
the Elysian fields of wargaming all day.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Well, we try not to be jealous of Phil. What I thought we might do is wander over to the workshop, have a look at what we've been building and painting. But while we do, let's listen to a word from our sponsors.
What? 10 beers?
I must get through to Sergeant Watson's position. Jenkins, cover me! Sir! Whoa! Sergeant Watson, bring your men in! Withdraw! It's all right, sir. We're enjoying ourselves. What? Yes, sir. It's these here chain of command rules, sir. We're having great fun. Chain of command? That's right, sir. It's that challenging but fun blend of command and control. It gives me the freedom I want to fight the way I want to. Never had so much fun, sir. And we've cooked you some sausages. Can't be helped, sir. Me and the lads are staying put. Chain of Command World War II platoon level rules from TooFatLardies. They really put you in control. And they're even better than sausages.
Here we are in the workshop. Oh my lord! And it looks like a bomb's hit it, but not any.
Yes, he's tied it up.
but not just any bomb. It's been a wargaming bomb. There's Gauls littered here. There's some jeeps scattered there. There's some more of my hairy Germans looking menacing by the window. It looks like you've both been busy.
Bandits at 6 o'clock, mate.
All over the place.
Yeah, some Bag the Hun stuff over there as well.
That must be fantastic. So, what on earth's been going on?
Well, mate, what's been going on, mate, is ancient war games rules, and with that, I thought I'm going to paint up some armies. Well, I got my old mate Matt at Glenbrook Games to paint me up some hairy Germans, of the sort you're rather partial to.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I thought, I better add some more to them. So I bought some Foundry Germans, which are lovely. And then I thought, Mr. Peevely, those Victrix Gauls look fabulous.
Why do a skirmish when you can do Teutoburgerwald?
Well, yeah. And so I bought my Victrix Gauls and stuck them together. I bought some Warlord plastic Legionaries and stuck them together there. I don't know. When I stuck them together and undercoated them, I thought, bloody hell, I don't like these. They look like the Legionaries in the Asterix stories. They're all sort of grimacing with strange sort of looks. But now I've painted them up, I'm rather partial to them.
I think they look very nice, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, they look great.
Well, I haven't done the shields yet. I'm waiting for the shield transfers, so they're a bit nude at the moment. They're without their scutums.
Are you going for the transfers on the shields?
I am bollocks to painting it. Really, there's so many nice. But I got the transfers in the box, but they're not pre-cut. And when you've got to cut out the central bit on a shield boss, I thought, oh, bollocks to that. So I bought some on eBay, which are already cut, so you just slip them off the sheet and put them straight on the shield, which looks like an awful lot easier than buggering about with that. And then I thought, well, I need some Britons, so I've been painting some Britons. And then I thought, ooh, some Republican Romans would be nice for Caesar to fight against my hairy Gauls. And careful how you say that, mate. And I had bought the basis of a Caesarian Republican Roman army a while ago, which when I was up in Peterborough, I saw this fabulous army painted by Andy Hawes, and I thought, this I must have. So I bought it. But I bought some more Foundry stuff to flesh that out. And so basically, I'm going to have about, well, 3 Roman armies, 3 barbarian armies. So very soon, by the time these are all painted, I'll have 6 armies. And that's going to cover all the initial barbarian stuff. Then after that, well, I don't know, Dacians, Greeks. It's all Greek to me, mate.
When you say armies, how many men are you talking about?
Well, mate, that's something we're working on as part of it, but this is sharp practice size. So typically the Roman
50 or 60?
The Roman auxiliary force that I've been playing with initially is 40 auxiliaries and 6 skirmishers and 2 leaders.
That's
so it's
manageable,
not a lot.
It's
It's quite very doable. It's actually, that's a small, sharp practice force.
And
But
how did you
obviously-
get in a box of these plastics? Do you
I
get
ain't
around
got,
that?
I haven't got a bleeding clue. I'll have a look.
And
Hold
tell
on.
us about spears as well while you're doing
Albert?
that, because I think a lot of gamers, plastics are lovely, but the plastic spears are a bit of a worry for
They
some
are.
people.
Now, here you go. 20.
Let's have a look.
These are the bolt action. They're the Hail Caesar ones from Warlord.
Yeah.
20 legionnaires in the box.
Multi-pound.
However, look, these are the hairy Celts. You get 40 of them in a box.
Right.
Obviously, the prices are different. I've no idea what the prices are. So, I mean, if you get 40 Celtic warriors, you're on your way to having a force.
And that's just in one packet, isn't it?
That's
Or
just in
box?
one packet.
Yeah.
So what I did was I got a box of their veteran legionnaires and a box of their ordinary legionnaires and sort of mix and match. To be honest with you, I prefer the ordinary legionnaires a bit more, but
You've got
there
a
you go.
huge range of
Sort of-
different scenarios you can do just from that painting, really.
What are you saying, mate?
You've got a huge range of different games you can do just from that amount of painting.
Having that range of figures available to you.
Yeah, you have
2 or 3
really.
boxes.
I mean, obviously, you're going to want to add some more. So, for example, typically with the auxiliary force that I've been playing with, I've added another group of auxiliaries, and I've added a group of 10 tribal allies.
Yeah.
And that makes for a really nice force. You've got a little bit of variety in there. The tribal allies are a bit rough and ready, but they operate in a slightly different way. And I don't want to talk too much about the rule mechanisms because we're at early doors yet. But yeah, that's the type of size force we're looking at. So it's very, very achievable. If you fancy playing Ancients and you don't want to paint hundreds and hundreds of figures, it's the same as if you fancy playing Napoleonics and you don't fancy painting hundreds and hundreds of figures. And so, I mean, I've knocked out my 3 armies pretty rapidly, and I'm not somebody who enjoys painting. But so that's kind of what I've been doing on the workbench. But Nick, I've been looking at your funky Jeeps.
You pass me that box if you don't mind, and I'll
I don't mind at all, mate.
I want to show you these because anybody who follows me on Twitter, which isn't that many people but is enough to have decent conversation, will know that I've been trying to find some vehicles in sort of 1/48, 1/50th, which are quite hard to get hold of. And many people say to me, why don't you look 3D printing, get some stuff 3D printed? And then they go into a whole load of very technical language about how it might be that I could perhaps get somebody to create me a 3D computer software file that I can then run through an acronym to then be provided to somebody who might have a 3D printer that could. And it's a very complicated process that I do not understand, and I do not want to understand.
Not off.
But I have got here.
I just nodded off while you were
I
telling me
know
about
exactly. Well, but I just, I just want the end product. So what I've got here is a guy called Ian Roberts, who we know, put me on to Paint and Glue Miniatures,
Right.
who are having a growing range of 3D printed vehicles. And I've always been a bit wary of 3D printing because some of the stuff that I've seen, the quality looks a bit shocking.
Some of the stuff that I've seen advertised on a well-known hobby site looks like a cow could curl something out that would look better on the tabletop.
Well, however, so I listened to what Ian said. I trusted what he was talking to me about, and I took the plunge and I went for some Jeeps. I needed some empty reconnaissance Jeeps because my reconnaissance Jeeps are all fully crude,
Full of blokes, full of geezers,
full of paratroopers. Right. They are crude, but they're full of paratroopers. And I had to glue them in because just the way it worked out. I wanted to put them on magnets, but it just wasn't feasible. So I've consequently, all my airborne Jeeps are actually full of men, and I need some that are empty.
Yeah.
So I picked up these. I don't know what you think of them, Sid. They come as one-piece castings, and I can't remember how much they are. About $5 each, probably.
So these are essentially going to be positioned on a table. The
where
figures
blokes have jumped out the Jeeps.
So they're not. So they're really a marker.
They are. But having said that, they could be so much more than a marker. So these ones that Gary has printed at Paint and Glue, the quality of them is actually really, really, I think, really, really good. They're ready to use pretty much. I mean, they come in a strange array of multicolours for some reason. But
Swap
I
shop.
think when they're sprayed up and painted, they're going to look great. They don't have that really heavy, grainy look to them. They've got some grain on them that you can see. But actually, I think with a heavy prime, that's going to come up really nicely.
If I don't put my glasses on, mate, there's no grain on there at all. But even with my specs on, they are lovely.
I think they're splendid.
I tell you, sorry, Sid, go on.
I think they're splendid. I mean, we're holding them up about 2 feet from our eyes, but if they're on the table, like 4 feet away,
I'm about 13 inches, and they still look good.
I think they're
and they're painted.
I think
they
they're
look
painted.
fantastic.
I think the primer will take some of that edge off them, and then.
The impression that I've had with 3D printed models is that they do flat edges, straight lines very well indeed. And the nice thing about this Jeep model is it's flat edges and straight lines. One of the areas where I've always thought that they struggle is where you get curves.
Yeah.
And that's when you really do get that sort of. It's almost like contour lines on a map, where it puts the layers on, and it really seems to struggle. But these Jeeps, being flat, look superb. In fact, you sent me a link to the site, and some of the German 8-wheeled armoured cars on there, which again are flat surface straight lines, look absolutely fabulous for about sixpence each. Well, not sixpence, but 7 or 8 quid.
Yeah.
And when you think normally, if you are buying a model, be it a plastic model or a resin model, you're looking at £20 to £25.
Yeah.
You then have to make the bloody thing, which is a right pain in the, painful bits. Whereas this is just printed out, and on these I can see what you've done is you've added some stowage, so each Jeep looks individual. Undercoat that with a decent car undercoat, so something a little bit heavier than you would get in a hobby thing, and all those lines are going to disappear. I think they're fabulous. I think they're absolutely great, and I'm thinking about buying things from that site that I don't even need because they look so good.
Well, I think he wants to grow his range, and if the other products come out like the Jeeps, then I don't have any problems with that at all. As you say, that challenges some of the curved surfaces and how they come out.
But this is an incredibly practical way of doing things that are generally a pain in the arse hobby, which is what do you do when people get out of the vehicle? Yeah. And it always looks odd leaving the vehicle on with the crew and also having the crew out. So getting something like this that is really cheap and just chucking them on the table, they're perfect.
Well, the cost option, as I say, I can't remember how much they were now, but I probably got 10 Jeeps for less than 50 quid. And
you've got 10 Jeeps?
Imagine if I bought the same volume of Jeeps from anybody else. You're talking about £15 a Jeep on.
And you'd have to build them as well.
And you have to build them as well. So actually, for me, it's a really good practical solution. I think there's there's a way to go for 3D. I want to just buy things off the shelf. I don't want to have to find plans and then. As I think I said on Twitter, if I want to eat baked beans, I don't have to go to a farmer and buy the beans and then go to a factory and have them processed and turned into beans before I can eat them. I just buy the bloody beans, and all I want to do for this kind of thing is buy the end result. I don't want to go through all the process. I'm not interested in the technical side of it, and I know that it's technically fascinating for many people who love the technology. I don't give a monkeys about the technology. I just want the end result. So people like Gary who are out there, potentially offering that service, it's the way to go.
That's interesting. So we've had plastics from Warlord, which you make yourself, and they've been good. And we've had 3D printing. And Rich, you're holding another sort of model in your hand. Is that another bit of new technology there?
It is, mate. It is. This is space, the final frontier of technology. This is a couple of figures that I picked up for my ghouls. I thought, thing when you buy these plastic stick-together figures is that you can get quite a bit of variety, but equally they're always ultimately going to be a bit samey. There's some 5 or 6, whatever they are, standard figures, and you've got to make it from that. So I thought I really fancy getting some different figures to lead my ghoulish gang. So I went on Warlord's site and had a look at the new SPQR figures that they're doing for their new sort of skirmish rules, or whatever they are. And I thought, they look nice. Anyway, I ordered them and they came in a box, and when they arrived, I thought, what are these made of? And it's apparently a new type of resin. And look, wibble, wibble, wibble.
Plastic.
It's like bendy. It's like bendy, wibbly plastic.
There's different straight, but you can bend them and they ping back to different straight.
Well, it's not the figures that are wibbling, to be fair. These are the swords, but they are because of that. They're not wibble, wibble, wibble like horrible plastic Airfix figures. They are. They'll take a bit of knocking, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Now
they're not brittle, are they?
They're not brittle at all. Now I have to say, this is Vercingetorix, and it comes with Vercingetorix, the main man. It comes with his sort of champion, who's a bit, homoerotic, really. I mean, if he went into a public lavatory, I wouldn't follow him in.
Looks like he's taking a tray of drinks.
That's his shield. Yeah. Well, he's probably taking the drinks in the public lavatory. But and they had a druid figure with them, which I was really keen to get. He wasn't from Clwyd. I think he was French. And that is a fabulous 28mm figure. These I don't know what the game's about, but obviously it seems that these are heroic proportioned.
Well, they're very large. That's bigger than.
They are very large, and I'm not sure I'm going to use these. But some of the other figures that are made of this material are really nice and more 28mm. So I think it's these major significant characters are obviously important.
Be interesting to see how the paint adheres to.
Well, apparently you don't need to undercoat them, but I cannot imagine myself ever trying that. The thing I will say is you can't file them down, and I had a bit of a job clipping bits off as well because it's like boing. And so what I'm probably going to do is use a sharp knife. But looking at them, I'm not sure I'm going to use these heroic figures. But the druid that came with it, and I bought a set of hounds, and their 3 handlers were beautiful 28mm figures, normal size. So, but I'm looking at this material, and I'm thinking, wow, all this new technology, isn't it clever?
Well, on that note...
Is it clever?
But, this is it. On that note, Sydney, what were you going to say, mate?
I was going to say, I've been going the opposite way, which I think is probably the way that you're going as well.
I've heard you go the opposite way.
Perhaps you should meet this bloke.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about just metals.
Yeah.
So...
Wow.
I was... Last Friday, I got home from work, and I thought, I really fancy sort of making up some artillery. Artillery, I think, is a real pain to actually make.
I agree.
Also musket artillery, you've got bits everywhere. And I thought, shall I just order some new figures? And in the end I thought, no, I'll have a look through the spares box. And I came across a load of figures which really looked awful. A load of heads, which I thought, swap those heads round. I made my own artillery tools out of bits of wire and stuff like that.
Wow.
Some green stuff. And you put it all together, and that is the other way of going, isn't it? You're using what you've already got and going back to metal. And I think, strangely enough, you mentioned this evening that was something that you've been doing as well, Rich.
Well, can we talk about the best bit on the bench? Have you got any bestie bits on the bench suggestions?
No, I've got some other bits in the workshop that I still like to mention.
All right, well, let's talk about that, and then we'll come back to this, because this actually ties in very neatly, although probably by the time we talk about it, I'll have forgotten.
Well, there is a segue into Sydney's part, because I want to talk about civilians.
No, go for it.
Yeah, so I at Market Garden, I wanted to try and make sure that we could get some nice little sort of photos that will go in the supplement, etc. And I thought, wouldn't it be lovely? What I really want is like an armoured column going through a town in Holland with all the civilians standing on the side of the road, waving their orange flags, etc. And I thought, great, let me get some civilians that I can use that for. And then I looked online and I thought, where are these civilians that I can use to create a crowd of people that go along, crowd of bystanders down the road? So I found it quite tricky to get that, but what I've been able to do is go to places like Bad Squiddo, who do some 1940s land army type civilian people. I've got a whole mixture of stuff from various different suppliers. Footsore Miniatures do some civilians, and to try and turn those into crowds. So basically what we've done is put them together on pill bases, about 6 civilians on a pill base. So imagine if you had the pill bases all lined end to end, you'd have a nice row of people down the pavement waving flags, and obviously they're metal figures like you, using green stuff to create flags and to substitute shotguns for waving banners and that kind of thing. And at the moment they're at the undercoated stage, and I think the next time we visit the Oddcast, I would have finished those, and that would be a nice little conversion project that I've been working on. But I do wish somebody out there in the figure manufacturing world would recognise that actually there is a space for civilians in World War II games, but they don't always need to look like Gestapo types or gangster types. Some women pushing prams and that kind of thing would be really quite nice. Refugee packs would be really, really good. And the waving, celebrating the liberation of Eindhoven kind of scene would be fantastic to get some figures on those.
Interesting how that ties in with what we were talking about in the last podcast, which is, do we naturally shy away from civilians because potentially you're getting into the realms of distasteful, people being shot, people being whatever.
Well, it's tough, isn't it? At Market Garden, we know that often they're in the basement where the
we do, as we found in Best.
Yeah, or there's civilians in the basement there, were there?
There were. Yeah, that's why if you remember, one of the battalions refused to throw grenades in, which is why they had a big problem clearing the area.
And one other thing I want to talk about before we go on to the best bit on the bench is the feedback we've had on the Lard TV show that we did, which was me building the Charlie Foxtrot Hotel from Carentan. And as you will know, I built that using super glue. Yeah. And as soon as that news seeped out that I'd made that using super glue, out from under the cracks came the PVA Nazis telling me that I should never be building my buildings with super glue, and that it creates brittle bonds, and that PVA is a much better glue to be using. Well, to them I say, no. Super glue works quickly. All my buildings just about put together with super glue, and you know what? They've all stood the test of time, and they've all stood the test of time when they've been played with by you, Richard, who are the most heavy-handed man in the hobby.
It's a controversy.
I want to say to the super glue users out there, it's okay to come out and confess.
This is a controversy along the lines of undercoat gate, isn't it?
Undercoat
It's one of those things, though, that
this is worse.
Conversation about it.
This is worse than undercoat gate.
I think the super glue secretiveness is even worse than undercoat.
Well, I say it's okay to use super glue. Come out of the closet and confess.
Hashtag.
Don't let the PVA Nazis dictate how you build your buildings.
Do you know what? I, as you know, believe that PVA is the better tool to use. But ultimately, I couldn't give a monkey's what you use. Just if that's it's a bit like everything in life, really. just do what you want to do, and that's my attitude.
That's it.
If that's what you want to do, whatever it is, just do it as long as you
I think
enjoy
as long
it.
as it hangs together over a number of years, you're not really going to be that bothered, are you? I mean, you could easily use super glue and then you can wash it with PVA, or you use super glue and then mini parts.
That's kind of that's even more insane than just using super glue.
Or you just, or do you pin it? And there's loads.
He doesn't. He just sticks it on with super glue.
Super glue,
Yeah.
and
And hope he hasn't made an error.
Yeah, that's right. Luckily, I'm such a careful planner and think about my work.
Yeah, we
And not
noticed
doing
in the
it.
video.
But even super glue could be repositioned if you're quick.
So that's
You've got a 3-second window.
It rarely rarely sticks that quickly. But it is, if you want to get
Which
things
is
done
why
quickly,
you should be
super
using
glue.
PVA, because PVA dries almost as quickly
no,
as
it's all
super glue.
kicking off. It's all kicking off again.
I had a tape of Colin Farron talking from Charlie Foxtrot talking to me at Exeter, literally weeping as I discussed the PVA option.
I know,
Unfortunately, I lost the bloody file. So sorry, Colin.
So that can't be the best bit on the bench. It's
No,
too-
that's ridiculous bit on the bench.
It's the extremely useful bit on the bench that you shouldn't be afraid of using or ashamed
Well,
of
it's not the
using.
best bit on
Don't
the bench.
hide your super glue when your mates come round.
So do we have a candidate for best bit on the bench?
Yeah, we do,
Oh.
and I really feel strongly about this actually, because having discussed all this wonderful new technology that companies tell us that we should be embracing, having spent what feels like several million years sticking together about 150 plastic figures with all their component parts, am I gluing on the left buttock now? Now do I glue on the right kneecap? I then decided to add some figures to my ancient German collection, and I ordered them from Foundry. And what I did was, they arrived, I opened the box, I stuck several spears on, and they were ready. And I thought, metal figures, it's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming, metal figures are coming home. And a song about that. And I thought, actually, why am I buggering about with what companies tell me? Embrace the new technology, it's good for you. No, it's not, it's good for them. New technology, companies change the materials they're using because it's good for their bottom line. I don't care about their bottom line. I just want metal figures, and I really, really enjoyed just getting them out. A dab of super glue, because super glue is great for some things. I had the spears on, the shields on. The majority of the figures, hardly needed any work. They certainly needed no work when it came to flash, but if they had, it would be nice and easy, just snip it off. And do you know what? When I find myself buying Foundry figures, in the past I've tended to do so because there's nothing else available. Like, I'll go back to Foundry. But I don't know why that is the attitude, because really they should be at the top of my list. Because when I look at those 7 Years' War Freikorps figures that I did, they are some of the most beautiful figures that I have ever seen. And because of the way Foundry have done that range, they've got head variants. So these are not metal figures like you used to get in the minifigs catalogue, advancing infantrymen, with shouldered rifle. You've got about 20 variants of these Freikorps with different heads, different expressions, doing different things. Same with these Germans. A pack of 8 skirmishers, every figure different. And I'm thinking, this is every time I go back to Foundry, it's such a revelation. What fabulous ranges they've got, how much huge variety they've got in the poses, and equally the fact that they're metal makes them so much easier for me as me to deal with. Now that's obviously a personal preference, but for me, those Germans, beautiful sculpts, cobblestone sculpted, I believe, they have to be my best bit on the bench because of the joy of just getting figures straight on that painting stick and paint and undercoating them.
I think when you're building up armies from start, it's a revelation, isn't it? Because you just need the basic types on the table.
Yeah.
I think when you develop your collection and you want to add variety, then metal can be a pain to convert. But as I mentioned with the artillery I was doing earlier, you get a huge sense of satisfaction by converting. Dealing with something which looks old and you've had it for 15 years and then you recreate it into something which actually looks okay. But I think when you're starting out, metal is a great way to go because all of the poses and something like the Foundry ranges are already covered.
Yeah.
So you just need to buy them, and there you are. You don't need to stick them together.
No, and I bought some Republican Romans from them, and I'm looking and I'm thinking these are beautiful figures.
Right.
Why did I go elsewhere in the first place when if I'd gone there, it would have maybe cost me another few quid? But at the end of the day, you mentioned spears. My plastic figures, half the bloody spears broke off while I was painting them.
Yeah.
And literally I'm there drilling them out and replacing them with wire spears that I bought from North Star. And I'm thinking, well, this is a faff. And I mean literally, with the barbarians, literally 40% of the spears broke. And that's a lot of work. So, to some extent, I'm so much more in my comfort zone with metal figures, and Foundry are really still up there as some of the most beautiful figures you can get.
And as you say, the range is impressive as well. It's
Colossal.
They've covered many periods with some nice packs.
Well, that's been a great best bit on the bench. Winner, Foundry Ancient Germans. So well done, Foundry, for that. Now we've got lots to discuss on the sofa of sincerity, but as we wander back across, I believe that we've had roving reporters out and about in Exeter for classic Clotted Lard, and let's listen as we also hear about that fantastic Lardy Games Day.
Well, here we are in Exeter for a Clotted Lard on a fabulous sunny day. And there are just piles of games here. We've overflowed into additional space this year. And I think there must be about 60 odd gamers here enjoying themselves. So let's have a chat with some of them. Okay, well, I'm here with Peter from Cornwall. You've travelled up from Cornwall, Peter. This is your first Lardy Games Day, I believe.
Yes, it is, yeah. Not long been into historicals at all, and I saw this one pop up in Exeter, and I thought this is my chance to get one that's local.
Right.
So yeah, made the plunge.
Yeah, because you're right out on a limb down in Cornwall, really, aren't you? So getting Edinburgh is probably off your radar. Yes. But okay, brilliant. So what games have you played today?
I played sharp practice, both games. I've done American Civil War this morning.
Yeah.
Where I got away with some horrific cavalry blunders.
Right.
And I'm just doing Peninsular War now.
Right. Quite different, really, because the technology leap in that sort of 50 years is quite huge, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. I think something that really stuck out was as soon as the Union, the breech loading guys, dismounted, they could get us across the table.
Yeah.
Really shot us to pieces. Thinking we were in a good spot.
You can see why the Confederates lost, really, when you look at those breech loading US cavalry. They're pretty impressive.
Without them, we were looking all right, and suddenly we weren't.
Right.
Whereas this is a different story. We're struggling now to get up the table because the range is shorter.
Right. So, yeah, absolutely. Very, very different. Okay, and so is sharp practice something you're going to be taking up yourself?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I've got a copy of the rules. This is my first chance to play it properly. So I'm sort of trying to absorb as much as I can and really feel the flavour of it.
Right.
And then hopefully I'll go back to my club and get them to dust off their copies, and we'll have get a game in.
Brilliant. So it's not going on eBay tomorrow morning?
No chance. No. If anything, they're moving. My figures are moving to the front of the painting table.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Really, fabulous. Well, good to welcome you along to your first Lardy Games Day, and it's great to see somebody, taking their first steps into the hobby and getting the opportunity to come along here and play the rules in what's hopefully been a really positive atmosphere. One of the things that we're really keen on is giving people a great welcome, and I hope you felt that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, everyone's really, really great. Yeah,
and a few beers tonight and a curry?
I think so. Yeah, I think I've earned it by then.
It's got to happen, hasn't it? Yeah. Right, great. Lovely to speak to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Yes, you can't activate the same unit.
Is it worse I'm here with Bill from Plymouth. Bill,
hello, Rich.
Your first Lardy Games Day, another virgin touched for the very first time by Lard. You've come along today. What made you come along, decide to come to this House of Fun?
The House of Fun, yeah. Well, been gaming for about 15 months. Never done anything before.
Right.
Played a few different games over that period, mainly down at the local club in Plymouth.
Right.
And actually, it's just a game set and series of games which are just fun. And what I found is some games, when you first get into it, some are really can be a bit tense, a bit serious, and these ones just hit all the periods I'm interested in, but the point where somebody tries to get a bit serious, something random happens, which just brings you back down to earth and mellows it out. And actually, it's a really, really easy thing to get into. But today's been great.
Brilliant. Okay, so what rules did you play today?
I played shot practice this morning, American Civil War, and I ain't been shot, Mum.
Oh, God, that's good, because everybody else I've spoken to has only played sharp practice, which sounds like we've come to a sharp practice event. So how did you get on with those two games? Very different scales. One in 28mm this morning,
28mm.
One in 15mm this afternoon.
Yep, sharp practice, 28mm ACW. Played a lot of Napoleonic before, and actually... The surprise for me was bringing in the breech loaders and the carbines. Subtle differences using the same rules. How you get a different feel. Very different game, isn't it? Very different period, and that 50 years of technology really makes a difference. What games do you play at your local club? What other games? Well, mainly I play a lot of Napoleonic, so I played the Black Powder, I played shot practice. Ancients found... I haven't really found a game I've really liked. Been playing a bit of to the strongest recently, but looking for something more on.
Well, we've got a new Lardy rule set coming up, which is being play tested, which is the ancient version of Sharp Practice. Oh. So that could be
that could be the game for me.
Could be for you. And how did you find your first Lardy games today?
Oh, fantastic! Recommend it to anyone.
Right.
It's
nice bunch, isn't it? It's always a good atmosphere.
Yeah, and. Just a breath of people, really. Where they've come from. Guys here from Kent, it's incredible, really.
I know. They must be mad.
If not, they will be.
No, I was talking to one gentleman who's come all the way down from Cardigan Bay. People are, and one guy's flown down from Scotland. Yeah, that's Charlie, but he's mad.
And the guys who are actually going all around the country now and actually attending quite a few of these events.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to see that people are prepared to jump on an aeroplane and come to a Lardy Games Day, and they're enjoying it that much, which is fabulous. So thanks very much for coming along, and thanks for talking to the Oddcast, and we hope to see you again at another Lardy Games Day in future.
And thanks for what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
Great.
I can roll it in a tray.
It's stitched up here. I roll a number they don't like, and then I roll it again.
That's because you're a cheating git, man.
3.
I'm here with Dee from Bristol.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
you've come down with Reg from Dagenham?
I have. I hate Reg.
Yeah, most people do, mate. Most people do. And what games have you been playing here today?
An excellent Pacific Bag to Hun and some Malaya Chain of Command.
Right, so it's very much a Far East theme for you today.
It is indeed, yeah.
Right. Did you think about dressing up in a solar topi and sort of long shorts?
No, I just decided to wear the loincloth.
Yeah, right. Okay, and been a good day?
Yeah, excellent so far.
Your first Lardy Games Day in Exeter?
It is, yeah, it's really good. I enjoyed the cream tea.
Right, that was certainly very nice, wasn't it? And it was a Devon cream tea, not a Cornwall cream tea.
Cream tea, that's just an offence to human.
It doesn't work, right? Okay, for you, right? Okay, well, I could take it both ways, as they say.
It's all about a jammy substrate, a creamy substrate with a jammy.
In so many ways, if I was doing it at home, I think I'd put the jam on first and then the cream, which is the Cornish way, apparently. But I have to say, I did enjoy the Devonshire option on the basis that I was very hungry and really it hit the spot. So, what do you reckon? First Lardy Games Day?
Fantastic, very, very good. Very good standard game.
Good atmosphere as well, isn't it?
Some really nice chaps.
Yeah, some really nice games on display, and I was talking to one gentleman who was playing Sharp Practice, never been to a Lardy Games Day before, never played Sharp Practice before, and he was saying about the atmosphere, which I think is one of the key things that's really enjoyable, is that we're here to have a good time. It's not about being competitive, but it's nice to win, but it's about having good games with like-minded people who enjoy themselves.
I have a tantrum. If it doesn't go my way, that'll be it.
That's you, is it? Right. I've heard about people who throw their dice when things are not going well, but that horrifies me. You'd never see me doing that, ever. Right, good. Well, I'll let you get back to your game. Nice to talk to you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, here we are. I'm here with JJ, who's been gaming all day in his bright orange combat stress T-shirt. So, JJ, let's just talk about today. We've had, I don't know how many gamers in there, with Bob's organised to turn up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's close on 50 odd
40,
gamers.
50,
yeah,
and we must have had 7 or 8 games going on.
Yeah.
So, tell me about your day.
I'm knackered. I am absolutely knackered. But it's been absolute blast. I mean, I actually didn't game all day today because I actually took the morning to photograph the games.
That's what you did.
So that we can do a blog post about it like we did last year and just let everyone see the quality of the games, because everyone was saying to me, and we had a couple of prospective new members for the club come along just looking in.
How do people find that blog if they don't know it at the moment?
Right.
What can they search for?
So the easiest thing to do is just tap in on Google search Devon Wargames blog, and that will take them through to our club. It's our shop window for the club, so people that are interested in looking for a club in Exeter they want to join, they go there, they'll see all the games we play. I regularly post stuff on there and then copy it into other forums, so they're easily find about Devon Wargames Group as a club. So that is our, as I say, our shop window for the club. But yeah, so going back to the new guys that came along today, I mean, they were saying, just the sort of like calibre of the games that are on display were cracking, absolutely awesome stuff to look at. For me, I mean, I enjoy photographing. I do a lot of photographing around shows and various things. So for me, it was just great. I got loads of eye candy. I'm really looking forward to it.
See you, Pingu.
Cheers, Pingu.
Guest star.
Guest star.
Pleasure as always.
Thanks, mate. Yes, so we had, in fact, we had 3 people come along today who are interested in joining the club. We had one person come along today who was interested in joining the club before they came today and actually signed on to come and do a Lardy day with us as well. And they want to come next month to come and join the club properly as a full member.
Well, really good. So how many members have you got then?
Well, we've had a bit of a sort of like massive growth in the last.
I thought you were going to say a bit of a cull.
We set out about 2 years ago to really sort of put the club on the map and try and make it known to people, that because a lot of people come down here, move down here, and they think wargaming stops at Bristol, but actually it does go on quite a bit down here. And so we took that decision as a club about 2 years ago, and I suppose we must have picked up about 10, 12 new members in the last 12 months, probably one a month, something like that. It's been rocketing along. So much so that now we've probably got close on 25, 30 sort of registered members in the club, of which we will get, well, some weekends we've had about 20 people come along, and where we were in the past 2 years ago putting on a couple of games on the weekend for each month, we're now putting on 3 and 4 games to cater for people that want to come and play.
And all kinds of games. Your TooFatLardies games are obviously in there, but there's other stuff as well.
All kinds.
Playing a lot of sharp practice, are you? Chain of Command is going on.
I've been shot mum.
Yeah, I played a game I haven't been shot mum today with Ian. He's one of your members, is he? Yeah, he put on a really good game.
Put on a lot of I've been shot
fighting through the Normandy blockade.
Normandy's
we managed to advance the front line about 700 yards. I think. So
hedgerow hell.
It was hedgerow hell, but we did it with style and without losing any Shermans, which is unusual for a Normandy game. I thought there was a real energy in the room, and the bars and the scones we had were fantastic.
Yeah. And do you know what? When I sat down with Bob, who, to be fair, is the guy that is the mastermind behind all our management.
The evil mastermind.
Yeah, although I like to think
with his cat.
Exactly. The main, probably I fulfil that role, because you see, as club chairman now, I see myself really trying to delegate these things out and let people blossom. And boy, is Bob blossom. He knows people obviously within the Lardy circuit, and I wasn't sure how well it would go last year, and obviously we had about 40 odd people come down last year. That's gone from strength to strength this year. The whole event has been about obviously enjoying and celebrating the Lardy gaming that we do anyway, and bringing other people in, but also last year we raised 250 quid for combat stress.
Brilliant.
And this year we're looking to raise more than that. I mean, check the little coffer box that I had on show, and we had 20 quid in there straight up from people just dropping their loose change in and stuff. So
excellent. So that's worthwhile, isn't it?
Yes.
A secondary benefit of it all happening. Absolutely. And of course tonight we're going to go out for a cut. Are you coming out for you joining us for that?
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. We've got a nice restaurant lined up. No rubbish. We're going to go to the top of the town.
One of the best Indian restaurant in Exeter.
The best. Okay.
I kid you not. And also, obviously, we will have a few Lucasades before we disappear off.
I think we should get on and do that right now. So anyway, from me to you, thank you very much for inviting us down and letting us join you for today.
It's great.
And for talking to the Oddcast. So
thank you.
Again, I put in Devon Wargames blog.
Devon Wargames blog.
And that will take me to.
That should take you to the Devon Wargames site. Yeah.
Groovy. Okay. Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, gentlemen, welcome back to the Sofa of Sincerity, and it's time to face the big issue for this episode of the Oddcast. And this was an issue that was flagged up to us recently when we ran our Ask Sydney section, hashtag Ask Sydney. And we had a message from the giant of the podcast sphere, Mr. Mike Hobbs, the Welsh wizard. So a big Borada a croeso to Mike. And Mike asks, in the last show, the Lord of Lard and his fat chum were discussing James Holland's book, and also logistics, over-engineering of equipment, and so on. It made me wonder why such things are never taken into account in our games. People will use a type of tank because it's got thick armour and a bloody big gun. But if it's got no petrol, then it's really not so good. So what can we do to address this and bring real-world problems into our war games? Asks Mike. Well, thank you for that question, Mike. Richard, I'm going to turn to you first, sir.
Okay, well, it's interesting. Logistics is always an interesting one, and actually, I did a bit of reading on this because we know we've been doing this. We know we've been planning to discuss this for a while. So I've been sort of reading around the issue as we've gone. I think it's important to define what we're talking about first. I mean, Jomini saw logistics as referring to both the movement and provision of supplies, but also the movement of troops. So he saw Napoleon's surprise arrival at Charleroi in the 100 Days campaign as a triumph of logistics, whereas most people would think of that as something other than logistics. So I thought it was quite interesting, but I think here we're talking about supply rather than troop movements. Would we agree with that?
I think that's right. I think we're really looking at the method with which armies are presumably provisioned, but also clothed, fed, recruited, kept in the field. I think that's all relevant for the consideration of provisions, logistics rather.
Okay. Well, I think really then we need to consider the way warfare is structured. We've got three levels really: strategic, operational, and tactical. And I think each of them potentially is going to affect our games in different ways. Now, Mike's hinted at the first one. You know, the decision about raw material, for example, is an important one which relates to logistics. So, for example, Germany's decision to start the First World War and the Second World War was based on a lack of raw material that they have as a nation. I mean, really, Germany's just got a lot of coal and potentially bugger all else. So, if they want to build a load of build a load of things and build a strong economy, they need to nick somebody else's stuff if they can't buy it. And of course, this is where the issue of the Versailles Treaty in 1918 comes along. That Germany has no real cash reserves because they've been spending so long on paying reparations. But then again, that again was what the decision to invade both the West in 1940 and Russia in 41 was based on. Now, within that big picture, there's key decisions to be made about how you utilise your resources, and Mike's hinted at this. So do you embark on a programme of building expensive, high-end armoured fighting vehicles, or do you build the utility version, which are individually less impressive, but numbers can compensate? And then what impact do those strategic decisions have on the battlefield? I think how we deal with that within our games can be quite interesting. So, for example, if you had a pint-sized campaign and you wanted to select a tiger, maybe you should be asking yourself, is that available or is it in the workshop? And what? Sorry, that's not available. You'll have to test again. Whereas if I'm selecting a Sherman as an Allied commander or a T-34 as a Soviet commander, that's not going to be a question that's going to be asked. At the operational level, I think it's interesting to look to somebody like Clausewitz, because the information that he can give us can really colour the way we think about things. I mean, he said it will be understood that even the most populous town can furnish food and lodgings for a day for about as many soldiers as there are inhabitants without any special preparations. So in a campaign, you go into a town of 10,000 people, which during the Napoleonic period would be quite a large town.
Yeah.
What's 10,000 people, Sid? I don't know. A division? And what Clausewitz is telling us, they can live there for one day before everything is gone. I mean, that's quite informative, and I think if you're developing a campaign system, that's something you really need to take into account. Clausewitz talks about Napoleon in Russia, and he writes about how an army can occupy a large area of space when it's advancing, because it's possible to advance in a manner whereby component parts are just close enough to support each other, but still on a wide front. However, when you're retreating, under pressure especially, the commander's got an imperative to keep the force concentrated, and that then limits the option. In fact, Clausewitz stressed that when Napoleon retreated from Moscow in 1812, there was only one road he could possibly take that could provision his army. So in other words, all his plans are immediately perfectly clear to an enemy. But would any of us have considered that if we hadn't looked at that reference in Clausewitz? And again, Jomini says, as an army advances and removes further from its base, it becomes more necessary to have a good line of operations and depots which can keep up the connections of the army with its base. Well, Jomini suggests that you need a town every 20 miles to house these depots. So an advance of 300 miles into Russia, you've got to have 15 towns of a significant size that are going to allow you to create those supply depots. And then if you look at the other side of the coin and you quote somebody like the Confederate raider, the Grey Ghost, John S. Mosby, he says the line that connects the army with its base of supplies is the heel of Achilles. It's its most vulnerable and vital point. So yes, there's issues here you've got to think about in terms of game design and campaign design, with regards to how you're going to keep those forces supplied, but also that then creates weak points for your army, and there's scenario options that you can put in there.
I think all of those things are absolutely appropriate for creating wargames rules which are based around history, as opposed to just setting a game within a terrain which has been thought of to produce a good game, let's say. Because a lot of what you're talking about is movement of armies and how armies move and how they exist. And if you like, you've got a body, like a human body. But how does the human body move? How does it breathe? How does it sort of exist? And some of the points that you made very much relate to what you were saying about civilians earlier. Armies cannot exist without civilians. You cannot provision and keep an army in existence without civilians. The towns in which, on that advance or retreat, have to be occupied. They cannot have been destroyed. They cannot have been looted. The civilians must be going about their normal activity, certainly in the horse and musket period, because supplies were provisioned privately. There were no huge magazines until the sort of Vauban sort of approach of the late 17th century. Armies needed to exist on private enterprise. They needed to be sold the food. Bakeries needed to bake the bread. You couldn't devastate land and therefore expect armies to move through it easily. So creating that infrastructure as a background to the games you play gets you to thinking, well, where is this game being fought and why? It's on a road for a reason. It's not just in open countryside. It's near a bridge, or it's near a city or town which is being besieged. And I think all of that adds, in the earlier periods, to sort of a real sort of plausibility and realism. But then you get to the situation where magazines exist, food can be processed and canned and kept, so armies can be kept in the field over winter, which wasn't possible before. That sort of preservation of food was a possibility. And you get a different sort of logistical question. How do you actually not only keep the armies in the field, but how do you actually provision them on a day-by-day basis? War becomes has a totality to it, which it doesn't really have as a seasonal, operational sort of theme earlier. So again, that at an operational, strategic level, that frames the games in which we play.
Does. Interesting point there. If you look at the Japanese advancing into Malaya and then Burma in 42, you'll see that they operationally were heavily influenced by logistics. because their approach was effectively like a plague of locusts. They were completely reliant on what they called Churchill supplies. In other words, stuff they nicked from the British. If they couldn't capture those important supply depots, they couldn't have continued their attack, their advance. And that very much influenced them operationally. Yes, we talk about how the Japanese are able to go round the British positions and move through the jungle, as opposed to the British, who were limited to the roads. But at the same time, the Japanese need to hit those nodal points, those supply points that the Grey Ghost talked about, because that's how they're going to continue their advance. And you can take that all the way through to the admin box, the battle for the admin box, just prior to the major battles of Kohima up there. And the key there was, the reason they were fighting for the admin box is it's not just the administration, but it's all the supplies. It's all the supplies that the Japanese needed in order to maintain their advance. And when they failed and were checked there, that completely did for them. That was it. It was not the end, but it was certainly the beginning of the end. And more than the end of the beginning. But they were influenced very much by the importance of supplies. And again, we talk about Arnhem. Really interesting one there. Planners have an obligation to consider the fighting capability of a force based on supply as much as on unit strength. So when you look at all those troops landing at Arnhem on day one, they didn't all rush for the bridge. Some of them had to be there to hold the landing zones where supply was going to come in.
Well, you've got the whole question there about logistics of airborne operations and how you actually launch and maintain and support it with the logistics of your air transport command that enables you to do that. What a different battle it would have been if British Airborne, for instance, had not had to hold those landing grounds open.
Crazy. But then again, Nick, where was that bridge that was blown up where Panzer Brigade 107 came down on its advance to Son? They were just in a village up there where they had to blow up 5 perfectly serviceable Panthers because they didn't have any fuel.
Yeah. And these beasts that are moving around. Yeah. You're talking about a quote. I've reached the Panzer Tactics book off the shelf, and there's a chapter in there, logistics and maintenance. It says. And the first thing it says in here is, supply is not everything, but without supply, everything is nothing. An otherwise powerful armoured formation that is immobilised by a lack of fuel is worthless in the face of the enemy. Unless its equipment is in good technical and mechanical condition, the armoured formation cannot fulfil its mission. For the tactician, logistical mastery is equal in importance to operational command. And it is something that, as wargamers, we often overlook. In campaigns, what you were saying just there about the ability to have a town every so many miles.
20 miles,
In the campaigns that we run, whether they're map campaign, Krieg bills, it's often an area that people overlook. We allow people to go down that unusual route and do the clever outflanking manoeuvre.
We want to do the funky fighting
without thinking about how am I going to feed my people at the end of the day and how am I going to support my troops in the field. We generally don't consider it. We don't consider logistical support in the transport that's available. You talk about Burma. The British situation in Burma, I think early in the war, and strategic logistics is important here. Didn't they send a whole load of railway carriages to the Middle East from India to support military operations there, which leaves them short in India. So this whole juggling of the supply logistics network is hugely important. You can see why armies have, for every one man firing in the gun, there's God knows how many behind them delivering the supply chain. And it isn't something we're very good at thinking about in war games, I don't think.
I think there's also a question between thinking and representing on the tabletop. So one of the things which I think is kind of difficult about logistics is that, as all three of us have mentioned, it's a key sort of theme, that interrelationship between the fighting troops and the non-fighting troops, between the army and the civilians, between the military and the land. I mean, that relationship is critical. You can't actually campaign or fight any war without thinking about geography, finance and logistics. I mean, for me, those are probably the three things which are present in all sort of warfare, and command being the more sort of tabletop thing that we think about. But the difficulty is weaving that into an actual game. I mean, if we've got a campaign game, like a pint-sized campaign, it's easier perhaps to think about logistics as being a theme which dominates what's happening. more difficult perhaps, which is possibly one of Mike's points, which is how do we encapsulate all of that within a tabletop scenario?
Well, the issue there is that how do these operational issues, or even grand strategic issues, affect the tactical game that we're playing on the tabletop? I mean, you can potentially have a look. The Germans are more likely to have mortars than artillery in Normandy because it's easier to resupply with mortar shells. On the Eastern Front, it's not the case because whilst the Soviets have parity in the air, and in some areas air superiority, they never achieved the air supremacy that the Allies did in Normandy. But then again, once you break out of Normandy, the Allies start to get issues. So Patton, has he got fuel for his tanks? Yeah, they've got air supremacy, but he's a long bleeding way. Once he really breaks out, he's a long way from those Mulberry harbours. So the issue there is, okay, maybe, having said earlier that, yes, you have to roll to see if you've got your Tiger tank, whereas I never have to roll to see if I get my Sherman. That's true in Normandy, but maybe when you're down near Brest or breaking out on the way to Paris, maybe those issues, or more importantly, when, resources are shifted towards Market Garden, maybe even at that point is Patton having to say, well, yes, if you're campaigning over near Metz, do you have those tanks? Well, that's something that you'd have to look at when designing a specific campaign. I mean, on the battlefield, at the tactical level, logistics is about, do men have the ammunition to fight? Clausewitz says that poor supply will sap the physical and moral strength of every man. How do we reflect that, and have we ever reflected that in a war game? It's a difficult one, isn't it, to say your blokes haven't had dinner for 3 days. They've been eating grass and boiling up their belts. I mean, how does that reflect men's ability to fight in the field?
I think that you can certainly reflect that, and thinking back to the 70s and the 80s, well, certainly the 80s, the much decried rules like Newbury fast play and Tertia, they used to have rules for have your troops been paid, have they been fed, if not you take a factor off a chart.
Well, that's a bit false morale, isn't it? We do that with false morale in the pint-sized campaigns. What do your men think of you? That affects your false morale. What does your boss think of you? What does your battalion commander think of you? That affects how much support you get. So I like to think that we are factoring some of that in there.
And I think that the degree to which troops can actually take pressure if they're in a situation that they are unfed, potentially no shoes or the shoes falling to pieces, poor ammunition, and just basically a sort of depressed morale because the commissariat's fallen apart. That would grind down good troops into being troops that don't really stick around too long, or they're sticky, or they just don't really sort of want to get stuck in.
It's interesting. There has to be it has to be a gradual process, isn't it? You don't wake up one morning having been 100% fighting efficient yesterday and suddenly go, oh bollocks, I'm fed up not eating and my shoes are knackered, so I'm only going to roll a 6 to hit rather than a 5 or 6 to hit. You can't be reflected in that simplistic manner. It's got to be more like force morale, overall force morale.
That's right.
And I think that's why force morale in a war game is more important than individual unit morale, certainly in the size games that we tend to be playing. It's got to be about how the force as a whole feels. Surely, I don't know.
Well, and not only in terms of ammunition and food, but also spiritually as well. So you're saying there about how they're being looked after and cared for, really, isn't it? And that includes all aspects of that. We talk about airborne troops, for instance. Normally on the tabletop, we don't worry about ammunition supply, do we? You sit there with your MG42 and you blitz away. Or we might say you've only got 6 rounds for the mortar. We sometimes restrict that kind of ammunition availability. Yeah. But we don't really think about, look, you're here to fight a longer campaign. Lots of discussion at the moment. We've been listening to I'm sure lots of people have been listening to downloading Where Eagles Dare in the Bath and listening to Al Murray's podcast from Arnhem. And they talk there, don't they, about the guys at the bridge expending lots of ammunition
on the first day.
Grabner's attack comes over, and how that potentially influences what goes on thereafter.
Actually, interestingly,
we're not very good at capturing that kind of thing generally.
No, interesting how Grabner's attack potentially could be defined as successful because Frostmen expended so much ammunition that they were unable then to fight the low intensity sniper dominated war that that then happened before the Tigers turned up.
Yeah.
And the Germans were then able to sort of snipe with impunity because they knew the British weren't able to respond in the same manner. I mean, I think we do address issues about logistics in terms that, we have that simple rule of 3 rounds. I always think that people can count and remember expending 3 rounds, whereas if you make it 7 rounds or 5 rounds, people will go, I can't remember how many I've used.
But also it can't be too linear, it can't be too predictable. Some of those things can with rounds, but for instance, it's at what point do my men become too dry and hot? So in Itlsud, for instance, we have a card in the Itlsud deck, which is called Water.
Yeah.
And if that card comes out and is followed by one of the Commonwealth units, that unit needs to basically take a break and refresh before it can push on. And so you can't do it every 5 turns. But you can do it. Well, and if it's predictable, that's fine. Same thing with ammunition in Bag the Hun. I know roughly how much ammo I've got. But I'm not counting each individual bullet as it goes through.
Well, it's almost an Edna system, isn't it?
Yeah, well, actually, so some by the more ones the number of ones you roll influences how rapidly you use up your ammunition. Of course, once you're out of ammunition in a dogfight, what are you still doing there?
No.
Well, one of the things that I think when you worked on shock as a principle, you amalgamated a number of different factors into shock. I mean, there's no morale test like there used to be in your rules.
Right.
And you used shock as basically being a measure of a number of different factors. I think one of the difficulties with logistics in wargames rules, as we're sort of talking about, is it's so vast. It can affect armies and fighting in so many different ways. Movement, combat efficiency, the ability to actually deploy troops in the first place or even fight a war. I think one of the things that you put your fingers on is trying to identify that one theme of logistics that you want to try and reflect in a war game. I mean, in the campaign, you've got more largesse, you've got more opportunity to think about logistics and how it affects the actual campaigning in different ways. But on tabletop, you've got to really try and perhaps think about one thing. So it's petrol or it's ammunition or it's water. And that then becomes a key theme for the setting of the game.
Got it in sharp practice. Put it in sharp practice loads. Run out. Do you take the water bowser, or do you just take a ammunition car, or do you take a mule train, which gives you very limited replens of both? I mean, I like to think that we do address these issues and think about these issues, and we certainly have. Issues for the powder being damp or short of ammunition in iron being shot now. So I think we do think about these issues. I think what I haven't thought about previously is that Tiger tank available, which I think is a fabulous idea. I mean, for example, we played the Scottish Corridor or we're on the last game of the Scottish Corridor campaign, and I think that would have been very different if in some situations the guy playing the Germans had been told, I'm sorry, your Tiger's in the workshop, you can't have it.
Well,
you're going to have a Panzer IV.
And if you look at the history of Panzer Brigade 107 or any of those camp groups around there, really with the armour, there's the tanks are being abandoned left, right, and centre because they've got some technical problem that they can't be resolved by workshops in the field.
Which you'd never do in a war game.
No, which we tend not to do in war games. You can do it we tend to sometimes say in a particular scenario that this tanker's, if you roll a 6 it'll break down or whatever. But we don't tend to think too much about the availability of assets, do we? We tend to say, if I've got a Tiger tank, it's going to be available to me and it's going to rumble on and it's going to do stuff.
I agree with that up to a point, but think about your ancient scenario, Richard, and particularly some of the medieval scenarios. Loads and loads of scenarios we would have is that if you've got a mercenary force, how good are they? Well, you've recruited them because your mercenary commander's an impresario and he's charismatic, and you think, well, he's going to be the guy. But actually, when they're first on the tabletop, you roll for their ability, or actually, you determine the ability when they're first in a firefight. So we have done it, but it's one of those things that the more technological the games get, the more we feel that, well, it's kit. Our kit should work. We've got a Tiger tank. It's not like we've recruited a bunch of people from Thracia, some sort of Thracian peltasts. We don't know what they're like.
I think
we've got a Tiger tank and it's big and it's solid and it's an emblematic sort of theme.
Well, I think can I come in there?
You go for it.
Yeah, because I think part of that makes me think about the game. And we're playing a game and I'm playing against you and I've got a Tiger tank. And we've got a balanced scenario based on me having a Tiger tank. we might have balanced that game on some kind of point system that means that my Tiger tank is equivalent to the fact that you're attacking me with, I don't know, 4 Shermans or something. If you suddenly take that Tiger tank away from me, it might be a very realistic scenario, but it's really pissing on my chips as far as, us having a game is concerned. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with that, but I think people would.
I bet you would. You'd stamp your feet and cry.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw my dice across the room.
You'd never see me do that.
That's what we do next time.
But is that like...
Back to the Jean Blue
I think you're
game
right.
600.
I think you're right, Nick. But is that really saying, well, I like reality up to a point because I also want a fair game? If you're in a situation, you're on the retreat from Moscow, you're at the Berezina, and you've eaten half the horses, you've burnt all the firewood for miles and miles and miles, and your guys are frozen when you're crossing the river. Well, it's not really a fair game if you're the French and the Cossacks are swarming around you.
Game or simulation.
But is it a game or is it simulation? How far do you listen?
The bravest of the brave. What a game that would be. It would be fabulous.
I totally agree. But if you're in a situation that you're set up as Marshal Ney, and then you find, well, half your troops actually can't move because they're so frozen.
Sir Rosas, they set me up as Marshal Ney.
But you can use these things though to replicate the challenges that people faced in for real. So when we did the airborne Kriegspiel game on Discord with Simon Tonkiss playing the airborne divisional commander, making his plans for how he's going to land his men around those bridgeheads, for instance. We had a conversation by email. It was Simon was on the train actually, travelling from wherever it was, travelling across the UK, on the train, and he was putting his air plan into me, and I was giving feedback from the air planners who were challenging him and saying that actually you couldn't have, you couldn't simultaneously land these group of guys from one direction here and another group of guys from this direction here because you had overlapping airstreams.
They crash into each other.
And it was for Simon, it was such a frustrating passage of communication that he almost threw his laptop out the train window. He told me. But I really wanted to give him some of those challenges and logistical limitations that we have to work with him. That I think ultimately show us and demonstrate to us that there's a reason why things are done the way they are, and we need to try and understand that more.
I think if you're in a game and you take it, if you're in a situation that you've got the choice between a Tiger tank, you can't really lay it on a player at that point once they've chosen their Tiger tank and the scenario is
balanced. That's when it's laid on the
hang on a minute. You can't really lay it on and change that game in such a way that nobody expects it. I think what you can do is say, look, take the Tiger tank, but there is a risk. There is a risk that it may not be available.
I was just thinking that. How about this at the start of the campaign? You've got a Tiger tank as a support option, but you're being told by the crew it really needs servicing. It really should be in the workshop. But you can have it. But...
Yeah. Those Thracian Peltasts are great, but I have heard on the grapevine...
They need servicing.
I have heard on the grapevine they didn't perform that well a couple of years ago.
Unreliable allies.
Well, that's interesting. One of the things I've got in the Ancients rules is that, you turn up with your Roman force with their local tribal allies and you roll a dice and are they surly? And if they're not surly, they'll operate. Your Centurion will say, run over that hill and biff up the people there. But if they're surly, they'll go, who the bloody hell think you are? We take orders from Klaklinix, our leader. Here, not you, mate.
And I think...
or whatever his name is.
One of the logistics are a little bit like that. They're something which really adds a lot of theme and they're intensely important in the actual historical campaign. And as long as the players are buying into the theme that logistics can make a real difference, then you can really try and simulate some of the vagaries of trying to organise the complexity of warfare in any period.
This question has made me rethink the way I would design some games and scenarios and pint-sized campaigns in particular. And I think I'm grateful to Mike for that.
Well, some of
nothing else.
Some of the random events that we've got in the Market Garden supplements, because we're going to be changing the random events table. And they are geared around some of those logistical challenges that are in there. But you can also make logistical challenges the subject of your game. So in sharp practice, a Napoleon at naval landing, where the guys are coming to shore to collect oranges, is an absolutely perfectly reasonable excuse why you'd have armed men, coming ashore into hostile territory to come and grab some supplies. The supplies raid in any sort of sharp practice scenario is a great scenario to put together.
One of the most thought-provoking games that we played was Call Blimey. with the emphasis, the great war level core size actions, with a huge emphasis on the building up of supplies. And the way the Germans potentially there are winning is to launch minor level attacks against the Allies, which obliges them to use up a large slice of their supplies before they're ready to launch their major operation. And all of a sudden their plans are kibosh because they've had to use up 25% of their artillery shells to stop what is in fact actually, if we were talking a smaller scale game, a feint by the Germans just designed to harass and annoy.
Which then delays the main assault by another 3 months.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, that's right. That's
while
the
they
type
build up the reserves.
That's the type of level of delay that we're talking about in that supply-heavy type of war.
And Call Blimey was in one of the specials.
It was one of the specials, yeah.
Those material slacked games were really, really good. You know, the thought that...
Oh, Sydney, that was brilliant. I love the way you did that.
They just tossed that one in.
Battle of material.
I mean, that's really I think the epitome of the First World War. And although, you know, I've done a lot of First World War gaming, I'm ultimately more convinced by the Call Blimey scale than the trench raiding scale. I mean, both have a place.
Yeah, both. But I wouldn't say I prefer one or the other. Both are fun, but the more poignant end is
really the fact that when you read a history book, why on earth are these guys doing this? Why are they just pouring in all of these supplies into this area?
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, it is war where the armies at an army level are relatively homogenous, divisional organisation, what it is, but it is a war of material. It is really a war of logistics.
But we should think more about the way that people are transported. We should think more about your communications in that regard. We should think more about logistics of communication as well. And we should definitely think about the way that people are fed and how they arrive on the battlefield in terms of having a full tummy or an empty tummy. And we should definitely think more about the whole supply question when it comes to ammunition as well. So that's ammunition and fuel, the whole munitions thing.
And I'd also say that the key factor is finance. I mean, maybe it's more oblique in the 20th century, even the 19th century wars, but you go back to Rome, you go back to medieval England or France, and you go back to the Renaissance period, finance is absolutely the heart of war. You cannot wage war without finance, and the provision of finance and the funding and the ability to raise funding on the basis of previous successes becomes critical for so many medieval kings.
Well, we also very often just ignore the fact that when people have been undergoing hardship for a while and they suddenly arrive somewhere where there's plunder, actually they do spend a lot of time enjoying their...
Kaiserslautern, 1918. The German troops were delayed more by the cans of bully beef that they discovered than they were by the British defenders.
And we tend to ignore that.
Well, I think it's interesting. We have to remember that people would rather play Storm of Steel based game than Storm of Bully Beef cans based game. So you can't make logistics the be all and end all of a game that you expect people to play week in, week out.
No, it's fascinating when you read these first-hand accounts of people that have gone through these battles. Particularly. I feel like I'm being unfair here, but there tend to be American accounts of airborne soldiers who've been in somewhere and they find themselves in a cellar, and all of a sudden what's going on upstairs has no meaning for them because they're actually enjoying some cheese and wine that's been left behind. They sort of take themselves out of the action where they're enjoying this sort of victualling process before they put themselves back into the action.
It's interesting.
It happens a lot. Read it a huge amount.
This is what we were talking about. What you were talking about before is about the way the American accounts tend to be more narrative about the story of people's experiences rather than we advance to position 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, 4, 5, 6.
And it's just how therefore what you read influences what you believe and understand.
Interesting.
But so again though, but taken we can use things around logistical situations that could be at the heart of a game. So I'm thinking of one of the scenarios that's in the Market Garden supplement, which is St Erdenrode, where actually 30 Corps have passed by and pretty much gone through, but they've left behind in St Erdenrode a Sherman tank which is mechanically unreliable, and it actually forms the heart of a scenario based around Germans are trying to push into the town from the north, and the American commander actually utilises this Sergeant McCrory, is his name,
Irish Guards
tank, and they wheel this Sherman north of town, and even though it's going at 5 miles an hour, it contributes enough to the battle to make a difference. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for like logistic supply type mechanical issues that meant that situation had arisen. So there's huge potential for these to be brought into our games. Absolutely huge.
So, well, I think we've answered Mike's question. It's been a great discussion, so thank you both for that.
I hope we've answered it, because the last few times on the Oddcast when we discussed an issue, we've had to come back to it next time round.
Well, I ain't coming back to that.
I hope we've done it.
No, I'm sick of that.
So sick of it, we're not even going to go to the library. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say let's not go to the library, but I will say Clausewitz on War, definitely a great book to read if you want to talk about it. James Holland, I mentioned it before, James Holland, 1944. Nothing new in there, but it changed the way I thought about the issues of logistics in terms of big picture, grand strategy logistics. So quite a few things in there I disagree with him on, but on that one he's bang on the nail, and the way he emphasised it really was a prism that's worth looking through.
And Nick, Panzer Tactics?
Well, Panzer Tactics was the first place my eye fell on when I said we're talking around this, because I know it's a Panzer Tactics book by Wolfgang Schneider, and it's I know you've got it in your collection, Rich. I've got my copy in my hand. Yeah. Many people will have this, and it's just got a lovely chapter in it around logistics and maintenance. And those of us who are into the technical aspects of, which are not me, of how tanks are recovered and put back into working order, it's really interesting to understand how they do that.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we've got time for on the sofa of contemplation, but thanks to the miracle of Lard, we've another trip to make, all the way to Hussars Hobbies in Ashburn, Virginia, where on Saturday 21st of September, Lard America staged their famous Bridge to Lard event with the incredible centrepiece of the Arnhem Bridge created by master wargaming craftsman John Emmett, and with 7 Lardy games in full flow throughout the day. So once again, we had Lard America reporter Andrew France on the spot to give us his report.
Well, it's a beautifully sunny day here in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., and currently en route to a Bridge to Lard, the next offering in Lard Day Fun offered by the chaps at Lard America. John Emmett hosting this one at Huzzah Games and Hobbies in Ashburn, Virginia. Got a full slate of Lardy games today with a bit of a Operation Market Garden bias, as to be expected. This is the 75th anniversary of that fabled operation. But we've got some sharp practice and Dutch Britanniarum as well. Should be a great day. Lots of games going on, lots of fun to be had. New folks, old folks, everybody in between. And have a chat in a little bit with some of the game masters and some of the Lardies who are in attendance today, and see what the day will bring.
And we're here with Dennis Jensen, a fairly new convert to Lard, and actually first-time game master. So Dennis, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did today?
Sure. I played in John Emmett's Chain of Command game. Managed to get some trucks blown up, push them forward, and they died.
But Nazi trucks, so it's okay that they died. That's fine.
Right. I mean, I lost the best stuff, but, they were Nazis, so it's okay.
Fine. It's all right.
Right. And then I ran a water tanker game. Water tanker was Battle of Nguyen, where the Black Bulls were trying to counterattack the 107th Panzer Division. The Black Bulls crushed the 107th by a victory margin of a Sherman and a Sherman Firefly destroyed versus 2 Panthers destroyed and 3 Stugs knocked out.
So actually, in between that game and my water tanker game this morning, Allies knocked out 10 German vehicles in water tanker games and had 2 losses combined. So it was a very good day for the Allied tankers. And we were just talking. So I know you're kind of one of the newer faces at Lard America. What kind of drew you to all things Lard? What kind of got you here as one of our newer converts?
It's a great group of guys that play the game. It's very, very fun, easy to pick up games. Not very people don't argue about the rules a lot. It's just kind of fun. Everyone just kind of gets along, and it's what do you think should happen here? I don't know. What do you think? Okay, we'll go with that. So it's not a overly competitive.
No one,
system.
Section 4, subsection 8 on page 97 says this. It's a much more casual atmosphere than perhaps some other gaming communities.
Absolutely.
So you play Water Tanker. Any other Lard games that you've been playing at home? Anything you're looking to getting into?
I play a Chain of Command. Okay. I want to give I Ain't Been Shot Mum a shot. Haven't played that. I play Flames of War a lot, so it'd be nice to give it a different
crossover.
Different crossover. I've got tons of stuff for Flames. So.
And think you'll be maybe GMing some Lard stuff in the future at future Lard days, or I know you're busy at some of our local shows working with the Hobby University folks, but think you might GM again?
Oh yeah, I'd definitely GM again, especially at the Lard events.
Very good.
It was a good time.
Glad you had a good Lard day. I know you were with us in Gettysburg, but good to see you around here, and we look forward to seeing more your games here at our Lard days and other Lard America events.
Great.
Thanks, Dennis. So we're here with one of my mates at Bridge 2 Lard today, Sam Fullerton, a GW player, but really kind of taking his first foray into historical gaming. Sam, you were in our What a Tanker game this morning. What do you think about your experience today, about the TooFatLardies games and your first taste of historical miniatures combat?
Yeah, well, it was really different from my experience in science fiction and fantasy wargaming. Quite a bit easier, I noticed. We smashed Andrew without taking a single loss, and so in that respect, it was an easy morning. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to playing more.
And any particular, if you would, start to buy into a historical setting, a historical game, any kind of era of history. I know you're professionally a historian in the 17th century. I know you said you would never want to actually game the English Civil War. Can't miss business and pleasure. But any kind of era you think you might be interested in?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to anyone in particular, I guess, that it's calling me at the moment. But I'm interested in maybe less conventional settings. So World War II, World War I are fine, but something a little bit more exciting.
Something outside the box. Yeah. We see a lot of that in Large Game, which is good. Well, glad you had a good time. I know you just happened to be in DC this weekend, worked out well. But hopefully we'll see you in front of a Lard table sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks. So we're here with Ed Bowen, one of the real guiding lights of Lard America. Both ran a game today and played. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did today, Ed?
Well, I ran another sharp practice American War for Independence game. It's a new scenario that I worked up around the encounter at Spencer's Ordinary. And I really was play testing it for Fall-In. And it went really well. I liked most of what happened. The players said they enjoyed it, and they gave me a couple ideas of things I might want to tweak for the convention.
Sure.
So it was successful.
And who ultimately won that game?
The British.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the British. The only thing they didn't get was the abandoned beer wagon, which they were disappointed.
Yes. Yeah. And so Spencer's Ordinary. So maybe more cavalry heavy than you usually do, or
yes.
A nice mix of stuff?
Yeah. In fact, it's one of the few times I've actually used cavalry. We had it on both sides. We had the British Legion standing in for the Queen's Rangers mounted, and then we had Lee's Legion for the Americans. And Lee's Legion tried to charge some light infantry and got to within like an inch of making contact, and then got blown away. So
as it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And then speaking of perhaps ill-fated cavalry charges, what did you do this afternoon?
Yeah. Well, as you know, I managed to destroy a British armor unit pretty well outside of Arnhem. We got jammed up on the road, and I lost a great deal of tanks.
This was a game Ed and I played a wonderful scenario of I Ain't Been Shot Mom. Wonderfully designed scenario, but poorly executed by the Allies. But they didn't call it Hell's Highway for nothing.
Yeah.
But hopefully you'll have some better luck as a gamer next time. But it sounds like you ran a great game, and I didn't get to see too much when I was running the game this morning. But I look forward to seeing the game at Fallen in its full glory.
Great.
And as kind of one of the spiritual heads of Lard America, what it's been two and a half years now that you guys we've been running events. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 2017 at Fall-In was our first event, and I mean I couldn't be more pleased with it because, I mean, for example, today, so Bridge 2 Lard, John Emmett set up. It's an opportunity to play and get together with folks, that for me didn't exist.
Sure.
In fact, I had pretty much gotten out of the hobby and just got back in when I discovered Sharp Practice, and then through the the wonder of the internet, we started, some of us started talking and trying to copy something like the Lardy days that they have over in Great Britain. And I just think we've got a really nice group of people, and people from different parts of the country too. So they come in for some conventions, and so it's just a great group, and it's really rejuvenated my interest in the hobby.
Excellent. I mean, and really, as you put it, we've had the games at some of the local conventions, but we've got these really successful Lard days now. Just kind of onward and upward. Excited to see what 2020 brings us.
Right. I think that the potential is limitless, and not only do we have good people, but they put on really good games with great scenery and painted minis and everything.
And
so
you're yourself included amongst those too.
Thank you.
Well, excellent. Well, it sounds like Lard America's taking stride for stride, advancing forward, spreading the banner of Lard across the land, and look forward to see what we've got next, and look forward to seeing you at Fallen, Ed.
Okay, thank you very much.
So a big thanks to everyone who came out for A Bridge to Lard, especially to John Emmett for arranging the day, and our variety of game masters, those who took a few minutes to be interviewed. Thanks, guys, for letting all the Oddcast listeners know just how terribly I played all my games yesterday. And I must admit, too, a first for a Lard America game day. We finished the day with a proper curry and some lager. Great fellowship, great fun. We're all looking forward to our next get-together. So back to everybody on Lord Island.
So another fabulous Lard America event. Many thanks to all of those who attended. And that's just about it from us. But before we go, we've a couple of shout-outs for forthcoming Lardy Games days.
We have indeed. This weekend I'm going to be in Ebor Lard in Yorkshire, which is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll record some audio so we can hear about it next time.
So on the 12th of October, Rich will be at Pie, Mash and Lard, a games day run by the South London Warlords at St Barnabas Hall in Dulwich. And on the same day, Bristol independent gamers are hosting Where the Leaf Falls, a French Indian War sharp practice game event which lasts all weekend.
Which reminds me, we missed a shout out earlier on to Devon, Doom and Andy at Big in Bristol.
And Reg.
Who ran their Bag the Hun day.
Yeah, we popped in for that, didn't we?
Cottage Lard. Yeah, absolutely. They were taking some sprogs through their paces with Bag the Hun.
They were great doing that.
We didn't give that a shout out earlier. We should give that a shout out now. Well done, guys, for running that.
Very good. And looking forward to November, we have Steel Lard in Sheffield, which has a larding through the ages theme. And Richard and the guys are meeting up for a few beverages in the evening before, if anyone's in Sheffield. And then there's the usual mix of beer, curry and frivolity on the Saturday night.
Yeah, not forgetting the games, mate. We are doing a load of gaming as well. It's not just beer all the way, although I'm sure there will be some. Anyway, well, we mentioned this last time vaguely or hinted at it, but a big shout out. This is looking forward to next year now. Big shout out to the Lard in Arnhem event that is lined up for the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of October 2019. Now that's a year away, but it's really worth mentioning it now.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning 2019 is actually next week, but you mean 2020.
Oh yeah, 2020. Well spotted, mate.
That's okay. I wouldn't want people to turn up a year early.
Yeah, well,
the ground in advance.
Especially since you don't know where it is yet.
We don't, but it's somewhere in Arnhem, Oosterbeek is going to be the event. There should be a battlefield tour on the Saturday, and then a Lardy Games, a day of Lardy Games.
Well, it will be
on the
after
Sunday.
that lovely Dutch beer.
I think it probably will be a bit of that. That promises to be an epic day of European Lard, and we're going there, aren't we, Fat Boy?
We are. We're going to be there. Absolutely, I wouldn't miss it for the world.
No, me neither.
So, that's all we can squeeze into this bumper podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Rich, Nick, and Roger Barrowclough and the gang who are going to play us out in their usual style.
Go for it, Rog.
Thank you, and good night.
In tonight's show, Sydney Roundwood was joined by Spinner and Richard Clark, with music by Roger Barclay and his band.